Here is one of the world's leading experts on the Chevening scheme. So I would encourage people to have a look at it. It's a very good experience. We always get very good feedback from people, even if there are some aspects of life in the UK. It can be a bit rainy, can be a bit cloudy. Some bits of the food used to be a bit dodgy. It's actually a very good country to learn in. It's one of the UK's real strengths, is academic challenge and questioning, self-questioning. So the university courses there are almost always much enjoyed. The second thing I just wanted to flag is COP26, to use the jargon. This is the Global Climate Change Conference due to take place in Glasgow in Scotland in November. This is a huge event. These global conferences on climate change happen periodically, but this one is a particularly critical one because I think there's a consensus, and indeed there's been a really good UN report recently. There's a consensus around a view that this is almost our last chance to really stop the most severe effects of climate change. We've made some progress, there's a lot of goodwill, a lot of understanding, but there's still a step change to make to really stop the most severe impacts of climate change. And if we don't do that, then the sort of severe weather, bushfires out of control, exceptional freak hurricane seasons and things are going to get worse for us and are going to really challenge humanity. So this is an important conference coming up. I know it may seem a long way away from bright blue skies of the Caribbean, but I would just flag that I think Montserrat's own work in the environmental area has been really good. This is a real credit to this small island with its small resources. I mean, no need for us to run through everything, but as an island, we're paving the way to bring in electric and hybrid vehicles. In the UK, basically, there will be no more petrol vehicles from 2030. That's quite close. Coming up quite close here in Montserrat, we're getting into that agenda too. Our solar power farm is taking very visible and impressive shape up over on the other side of the island. We have a brilliant plan for climate change adaptation. The government of Montserrat's plan is a really excellent archetype of that. It includes a broader renewable energy plan, not just solar. And if you look at our work on our own unique wildlife here, we are doing very well on the bird life. Recent counts have shown indications that populations of our rarest birds, in particular the oriole, beautiful oriole, our shy forest bird, are doing well. And also our turtles. We have a team here from Britain's Exeter University and the Marine Conservation Authority who are working with Ministry of Environment colleagues, in particular our Mr. Turtle, Alwyn Pontine, to do some satellite tagging, to make some further observations of the turtle population and to help guide our systems to protect them. And just recently, I myself was very lucky to go out on the Heliconia Star and help put into the water some state-of-the-art cameras. I think they're called shark eye cameras, which are able to beam back pictures of the intensity of fish life in our waters off the coastline, and will shortly be used in a sort of leading edge type of experiment to observe and monitor a coral disease. It's called stony coral disease, I think, which is spreading around the region here, and we can have a look at the impact of that on our own coral reefs. And I should just mention on the morning when I know ZJB have covered the work that the Ministry of Agriculture are doing to promote Montserrat's own agricultural output, with the plantains now very much in the frame. That's all part of it, because growing our own means we don't have to ship it in, we don't have to use fossil fuels to bring things from around the world. We can grow our own here and feed ourselves with our wonderful own produce. So I would like to say a real credit to Montserrat and all involved in the work that's going on that front. And then lastly, and just very briefly, and it relates to the climate change point, is obviously we're getting into the business end of the hurricane season. We had a Storm Grace, come at us last week. In the end, it didn't deliver very much, I think, of a bang, but it was a good practice for us. And although it's been a somewhat odd season so far, perhaps a little bit quieter than we might have expected in terms of numbers of storms, There is a sense that the storm track this year is a bit more at us than it was last year, and that is certainly something we all need to watch. Montserratians are brilliant on storms and disasters. You are very seasoned people in this, and you keep very calm and prepare very diligently but quietly, which is excellent stuff. But these storms, as DMCA and Major Ryan always tell us, it only takes one. We mustn't be complacent. So just it's an appeal really to us all. Please let's keep alert to these storms and help each other through them. Look out for each other, and let's not be complacent. So thank you very much, folks.
So we'll open the floor now to questions. As we're doing a live stream, when you answer your question or when you get your questions, yes to, you can just give your name and which media house you're representing. So can we start with James first?
Thank you very much, Anesta, and good day to you, AG. And I want to start with two topical questions. And I know that the first one, I probably would be stepping on some toes, but I'm in this business long enough to know that I would not be fazed by this. Now, this first one has to do with the Premier.
With
the Honourable Premier. Mm-hmm. And the fact that 3 weeks ago, we heard that the Honourable Premier was hospitalized. And despite numerous attempts to find out what is happening with the Premier, we have not been able to get any information whatsoever. Now, two things come into consideration. Accountability to the electorate and the responsibility. We've never heard across the region when a leader of government business is hospitalized, and we've heard nothing. So what we would want to get from you at this point, for inquiring minds, what is the status of the Honourable Premier?
Okay, James, thank you. Well, it's for the Premier, obviously, himself to advise you about his own state of health and answer your questions on that. It's not for me to answer questions about a colleague's health. But I can say that Premier and I had a meeting yesterday. It was an in-the-flesh meeting, and he looked very fit and well and cheerful, apart from his slightly wobbly foot, which he is quite rightly and wisely husbanding a little carefully still. But otherwise, he's on good form. So as I can speak from personal experience, because we had a good long chat together on various things only yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, Your Excellency, we've just been concerned as to what was happening, and the fact that we've tried basically all the avenues, and we did not get a response, and we're concerned.
Well, I hear that. I mean, obviously people's individual health is a matter. It's a matter of personal confidentiality and privacy. Some people might want to say a little bit more about their state of health at any one time than others, but that's a matter for personal judgment. I can't comment on that, really.
Your Excellency, we are not looking for specifics as to what is actually wrong with the Honourable Premier. We wanted to know if he's hospitalized, who would be acting in his absence, and things along that line. And we got nothing. So that is the reason why I posed the question.
Well, if somebody in government, in cabinet, is sort of out of action for any reason, because they're off the island or because they're sufficiently unwell that they can't do their job, then there are arrangements for cover. In my case, that would normally be the Deputy Governor. In the Premier's case, it would normally be Dr. Sami, the Deputy Premier. In other cases, it does depend a little bit, but the Parliamentary Secretary can come in and provide cover. So if somebody's actually unable to work, then those measures come into play, and I'm sure they would be, for ministers and the Premier, they would be activated and communicated. But clearly that hasn't been the case here, so I think that's probably the answer to the question, isn't it?
Okay, we'll take what you've given us, and I'll move on to the next one before I pass on to my colleagues. The flag raising, and we've heard of that story, and we knew what took place, and all the feedback both on ZJB and on social media. Now, as a head of state, there are certain protocols that would come into place when it comes to a flag raising. Can you just talk us through from your own experience?
Talk you through what exactly?
In terms of the protocols with flag raising. In the case of a flag being raised from another country, well, let's put it in perspective. From Jamaica in Montserrat, is it right to raise that flag by itself, or along with the Union Jack or the Montserrat flag, and which flag should be flying the highest, and things like that? I'm just talking about the protocols, and you should be very much aware of that. So we're trying to get your perspective on that.
Well, I'm conscious there was a bit of debate about the flag raising issue. I mean, the Premier's office have put out quite a detailed note about the protocol around flag flying. So I can't really add any more than is already in that note. And the Commissioner of Police, I think a couple of days back, maybe a little bit more, put out a note explaining a little bit more background as to where there may have been a misunderstanding over this particular event. So that's really for the Commissioner of Police and the Premier's office to answer your points on that. But perhaps I can just give you, if it's helpful, because I can see there's been a bit of debate and concern on the island. I mean, my understanding is that in the past several years, there's been a sort of practice has developed here that our police friends, on the national days of some of our regional counterparts, so Guyana and St. Vincent, will use the opportunity for a bit of practice. So perhaps newer recruits in the police, younger police who haven't had so much experience, will practice doing a sort of formal flag raising ceremony. And they typically do that in their compound in Salem, at the Salem Police Headquarters. That's been a private matter. It's been low-key. It's taken the form essentially of the opportunity of a practice, and the intention behind it has been one of goodwill and inclusiveness, which are very much the Montserratian qualities, to just, I suppose, show a bit of togetherness to some of our police brethren who do come from other islands. Our police have a relatively high number, I think, of recruits from other islands. So on that basis, I haven't myself been involved or been aware, and there's no reason why I should, but that seems to me to be quite a nice, human and enlightened sort of approach, actually. In this particular recent case, I think for whatever reason, it may have been handled a little bit differently. It may have been given a higher profile, made more public, and with invitations to people to come and join and attend. And if you do that, then the sort of protocol concerns that you've mentioned there can come into play a bit more. It is unusual for a country, however friendly we may be, it's unusual for a country to sort of formally salute another country's flag in that way. And I think the Commissioner's note has explained the background, lessons have been learned and absorbed on it, and I'm sure going forward a sort of slightly adjusted approach will be taken. I would just add one last thing, is that Montserratians are, in my experience here, very gracious people and very welcoming people, and I really like that. Like most countries, most territories in the world, we can't do everything ourselves, but particularly here with a small population. So we have a number of folks from other islands, Jamaica, Guyana, and what have you, And I would say I think the togetherness you see in this community is fantastic. They do a great job. They are helping us in a number of ways in our community, whether it's in our hospital or in other areas of our service. And I think that's fantastic to see. I think it's a really good example to the world. In general, we are really kind to each other, a really close community, which is a fantastic credit to this island. And I would just like to make that point and note that flag issues and concerns of that sort need to be put in that broader perspective. I don't know if that helps, James. Yeah.
Good morning, Governor Pearce.
Hi.
My name is Kai Wilkinson. I'm a representative of the Montserrat Reporter. You were speaking this morning about one of the subjects that I've been following pretty closely myself, and that is in regards to the turtle research. The team that is down here now, you mentioned that they will be conducting some research in association with some of our with some persons here in Montserrat.
Yeah.
You mentioned Mr. Pontine. I am wondering, are there any other persons involved in this project? And also, what, if any, will be the long-lasting, or will there be any training in terms of data collection for when this team leaves? Will there be measures put in place to continue the type of research that they are starting right now?
No, thank you very much. I don't know the details of all the individual names involved, but it's been, I think, quite a widespread network of people involved. They have, I hope I'm not stealing their thunder in saying this, but they have been enjoying a number of interviews with a whole range of different Montserratians from different walks of life, including fishing people, fisher folks, and people who are very active in different businesses in the sort of pre-volcanic era. And they've really enjoyed that and taken a lot of pictures, and they are putting together a short documentary film, which I hope we will be able to see and show on island and more widely next year with their agreement. So they've sort of broadened it out, and they've been very struck by how sort of warmly ordinary Montserratians feel towards the turtle world. They've been very struck, actually, how young people on island seem to have a natural instinct for preservation and the value of species. I'm a bit of an oldie. Maybe that's a generational thing. I have to be honest, I do remember when I was on holiday sometimes as a young boy with family, turtle soup being served in places, and I didn't really think about it much in those days. But our youngsters today really do. They really do. So they've been very conscious of that. And one of their main pieces of work, I think, is they've got some quite nifty satellite, what do you call them? Tags, which they have to catch the turtles. They have to scrub a little bit of the shell, and then they use epoxy glues, very powerful epoxy glues, to stick on these transmitters. The bulk of the pack is very, very heavy, high-quality lithium batteries, so they can go under the water and things, and they can work for up to 3 years. And they're surface activated, so they send back the signal when the turtle is close to the surface. Using that, they can track the turtle's journey and life cycle. And it's surprising, you see these wonderful creatures come up on the beaches here, but we don't really know where they go afterwards. Is it all the way to the Atlantic coast of Africa? Where is it they sort of spend the rest of their time? And there's quite a lot of information about the detailed life cycle of these animals, which is still missing. So those they're working on. They're doing it in conjunction with the UK's probably, I think it's its largest specialist university faculty on turtles in Exeter. They have counterparts in places like Ascension, where there are particularly high concentrations of turtles, and they're pooling that knowledge in a very effective way. So I think it's an excellent project, and I know we shouldn't preempt their research, but my sense is that they're finding very encouraging news, a bit like orioles and some of the other forest birds we have here, that actually numbers look to be strengthened compared to 2005, 2010, that period. Numbers seem to be quite strong. And that's a real credit to the way the island has developed its sort of beaches and its business world. yes, we need to make money and do commerce to grow, but the turtles, we're managing them well.
Just to kind of piggyback on that, I agree very much with what you said, but even the 3-year nature of the actual transmitters, as well as the contribution that persons of Montserrat have made to increasing the turtle populations, I think that's even more reason why there should be some type of continuation, or at least a data collection within this region of satellite stations that you mentioned, so that we can continue to monitor and continue to gain this type of research.
I think they are coming back next year. That's already booked in for an even longer period. So I think it is a scheduled research.
In terms of resilience, you were speaking about the climate conference next month. The Caribbean has been notorious in terms of being one of the most vulnerable regions in the world when it comes to climate change. However, oftentimes fundings and efforts are coming in terms of relief, as opposed to kind of resiliency policies or structural implementation of things that can actually help us to kind of shield and better ourselves, better prepare ourselves, better our standards during these, to be more adept to handle the climate change issues. Is there any way that you can see us getting further along in these types of policies?
No, those are very good points. Very good points. I mean, that whole issue of resilience and adaptation is one of the top 4 themes that the international community is going to address in Glasgow at COP26. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I guess we would all like to be able to inject more funding and do that more quickly, but it does have to be incremental. Unfortunately, that's just the reality. There isn't the wherewithal to make it happen suddenly within just, a few months. But if you look at our own experience in Montserrat, we've got fiber optic connection undersea for internet. That's very, very resilient. Grace, that storm that came before it, I've forgotten the name, Henry or something, was it? No, Fred. They don't touch it. So we are very robust on that. If you look at the plan for the new hospital, it's a very nice design and is very carefully calibrated for hurricane and storm resilience, meets all the codes and in some cases beyond. If you look at the work we're doing on the runway and the control tower, clearly very important strategic infrastructure asset, has to meet a whole lot of hurricane resilience considerations. So it's not perfect. It's not all happening absolutely at once, but I do think incrementally we're in a better place. And if you look at the more sort of short-term tactical resilience, the DMCA, Disaster Management Coordination Agency, here is in a much better place than it was when I first arrived. It has a much bigger spread of very good quality kit, including drones, very good generators, lighting towers, and now we're replacing with improved quality masks that very substantial stock of masks we had and we drew down on both in the early stages of COVID and to support our friends in St. Vincent when they had their volcano go off. So it's a journey, but we are on it.
Good morning, I'm Governor Pearce. Vinay Abbas here from 664 Connect Media. On the 23rd of July, you were seen donating some of the last batch of vaccines that we had on the island to the Bahamas. Fast forward 3 weeks, and we now have 2 active cases of COVID-19 on the island and Delta variant literally on our doorstep. Recently, the UK donated 4 million vaccines to 50 nations, excluding Montserrat. Will we receive more vaccines from the UK since only 1,368 persons in Montserrat have opted to take the vaccine voluntarily?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we gave the vaccines to the Bahamas, and a month or two before that, I think we'd given some smaller lot to Anguilla. And that was simply because the stock that we'd been given by the UK had run close to expiry. We weren't able to use it all here because of a certain degree of vaccine hesitancy on island. And so rather than lose it, we looked around for people who needed it, and the Bahamas were extremely grateful because they'd gone right down to zero. They had no vaccine at all for their country. So it was a sort of win-win, out of a difficult situation. The 4 million vaccine donation that you mentioned there is a different sort of thing. It's not for the British family. It's deliberately for other countries who are running short or who have challenges. And so that was a donation on top of the UK's commitments to the COVAX global vaccine facility. So it's a sort of slightly different thing. As far as the OT world is concerned, the Overseas Territories family is concerned, UK is absolutely full square behind Montserrat and all the OTs. We've had a tremendous level of support in terms of vaccine provision, test equipment, PPE. I mean, it's been convoys, air convoys, but it's been a very large amount of equipment supplied to Montserrat. And yes, if Montserrat needs more, the UK will supply it. The issue is that because we've hit this sort of ceiling at about 42% of adult population, excuse me, there's no point in sending more if it's going to cause problems for us and we're going to need to spend a lot of time and money then shipping it on to the Bahamas again or something. So we need to be clear that what the demand is here. And my own view, and I've raised this with the Ministry of Health here, is that I think a wise way forward would be to ask people to indicate that they want the vaccine this time. So a sort of named list. I, Joe Bloggs, would like the vaccine, I confirm. That's not to say it's an absolute commitment written in blood. That's not the way life is. But you'd expect, I think, now going forward, people to indicate that they want it. And that will give us a clear guide. And then once it arrives here, we distribute it to those people who said they wanted it. And we avoid this sort of tense standoff between the government machinery that wants to vaccinate as many people as possible, because that's the top medical advice, and parts of the community that have a hesitancy about it. We want to get away from that.
Thank you. My second question is, in 2020, the government of Montserrat decided to cancel the ferry service. However, last week, the government published an invitation to tender for a 3-year framework passenger agreement to provide passenger ferry services. If the ferry service returns, does that mean that the aircraft passengers will no longer receive the subsidies that's currently in place? And what are the government's plans to ensure that both services work in harmony with each other as opposed to one service undermining the other because the fees are not competitive?
Yeah. Thank you, Vanessa. Those are very good points. Well, I wasn't myself cited on this particular 3-year framework proposal for the ferry. But the bottom line with this is that access for Montserrat is crucial and it's also expensive in the way of these things because of a 25-mile gap in a choppy sea, because of the lack of a sophisticated airport that can take long haul jets. We have quite an expensive and sensitive access structure, and I think the key is that we need to collectively take a fresh strategic look for exactly the reasons you've said. We don't want to be having a system where we're paying from all of our taxpayers' funds to have different access agencies, whether it's airlines or ferries, different airlines, all competing against each other. That's just not sensible in these times of very stretched public finances. We need to find a balanced arrangement where, yes, there's the resilience Montserrat needs. So that might well mean you need some sea connectivity as well as air connectivity, not just either air or sea. That might mean that. But you need to do it in a balanced way so that the demand is not being competed against between the two people who are receiving the subsidies. There's got to be a good, intelligent, load balancing way of managing that. And that needs a strategic collective discussion. Thanks.
Good morning, Governor Pearce.
Hi.
Narissa Golden, Discover Montserrat. I just kind of want to follow on Kai's question to you. The funding for that turtle project came through the Darwin Initiative, and I think they are currently open for applications as well for the new cycle. One of the challenges with Darwin and other projects is that they tend not to repeat the project and the funding. So in the case of the Eco Montserrat project, that did stellar work for 3 years, setting up a recycling initiative, they now hit that wall of not being able to continue the process. Are there other schemes that you are aware of or other measures to be able to get projects like this continued, because the challenge remains that Montserrat is not doesn't have the capacity to actually take over the management of these very necessary projects.
Thank you very much. I think there was perhaps a misjudgment made in the switch between Darwin and Darwin Plus. So when you look at the Otis family, I forget exactly when it happened, about a year or more ago, there was a decision for sort of bureaucratic reasons primarily, I think, to change that funding process. And I think it's much better now that, thanks to some advice and representations made by a range of people, including our own Ministry of Environment, I think, here, and people like Mike Penkowski, the Conservation Forum for the OTs, that's been heeded, and Montserrat can now apply for Darwin Plus, as can St. Helena. I think that will make life a little simpler and quicker. The nature of the Darwin Plus funding scheme is a bit more aligned, I think, to Montserrat's type of needs. Smaller islands, less resources. So I think that's one good thing. But I absolutely agree with you that continuity is key. I wasn't aware personally that Eco Montserrat's particular bids had sort of foundered because of that issue of the Darwin ethos not supporting continuity. I wasn't aware of that. But if so, I think it's from what I see, I think this journey of recycling, it is a journey, and you can't simply stop at the first twist or the first junction. You've got to help going forward. And we are, with the Ministry of Environment and with UK partners, we are trying to help get support for a further recycling project here, led by Eco Montserrat. I don't know when the timing of decisions will be. You may know better, Ernesta, but it's in the pot to be looked at. So don't count it completely out, I think, is the short answer.
Thank you. My other question would be, there has been some discussion in the UK about reduction of the civil service. Is that a consideration being made for Montserrat, given the challenges with budget and the expected loss of revenue projected?
Well, it's certainly an issue in the UK. I mean, we now have one of these things we call spending reviews in the UK, public spending reviews. I think it's started now and due to be concluded in the coming couple of months or so. Every ministry in the UK has to make a submission saying what it needs funding for, and that all gets looked at in the round. But to be perfectly frank, I would be very surprised if some quite significant staff cuts are not involved in the public service in Britain over time, at any rate, in this coming spending review period, because the pressure on public finances is huge, and public debt has gone up by nearly 20% of GDP in the course of dealing with COVID. So I think that is likely. I think it's particularly likely in our own FCDO, our merged FCO and DFID, because the two have come together. Inevitably, there are areas, perhaps particularly on the administrative side, but also some others, where if you're in really tight circumstances, you can probably identify some streamlining. So I think we're going to find that. Key in that is, okay, so there may be some reductions, but key in that is to make sure that the staffing model is more attuned to what's needed here. And in my view, that means we need more FCDO staff, more development trained staff on island. The scarcity of development staff on island, living here, working here, understanding it, developing an intuitive feel for it and an empathy has been a significant constraint. And in my view as governor, that needs to change. Whether that will be debated, but that's my personal strong recommendation. As far as the Montserrat Civil Service is concerned, we carry about 100 vacancies on the nominal roll, so we're already, there's a lot of positions that aren't filled. Some people tend to think, oh, this is a huge public service, but when you actually work it back and you look at what the functions the public service here does, that's not axiomatically correct. We're talking about a big village-sized community on a rock that has to manage the functions of a state, immigration, as well as hospital, education, all those things. So I'm not necessarily convinced that the numbers are hugely awry, but there is always benefit in streamlining and checking and self-reviewing, because smaller systems work better. People who are well loaded in their jobs are almost always happier and work better and feel more fulfilled than people who are sometimes wondering the worth of their job or are not fully loaded. So, and things change. You know, digitization changes the numbers you need for things. We should be moving away here from, you know, the multiple copies on paper copies of documents I get, 14 individual pieces of legislation every time the Parliament looks at anything. Every one has to be signed individually. Those things, I know Dr. Sammy is pushing this. We really can save ourselves by moving that forward. But let's do it in a way that's empathetic and that understands the island's needs and the peculiarities of a small exposed island, not because of some broad brush model that's imposed from the centre. Yes.
Good morning, Governor.
Hi.
Dwight Sampson, DS Media. Let me just first say congratulations to my colleague, who is now Mrs.
Oh, congratulations.
That's a huge step in life. Governor, my first question is, we are fastly approaching the end of August, which means that we are now almost into the, fourth month of the hurricane season. And let me prefix by saying that the folks at the DMC are doing an extremely good job. I observed, coming close to the passage of Tropical Storm Grace, the bulletins. However, we haven't had any discussions from a media standpoint with DMCA or any other part of the NDPAC association in terms of our plans, where we are in terms of, you know, what are the updated plans for 2021, sorry.
Yeah.
And of course, we are approaching the busy season, which of course is September into October. So I just want to find out if there's any plans whatsoever to have any discussions with us, the media, and also if there is any logistics in place in terms of forwarding information to us in the media, because I haven't received, I'm not sure about any other media house, but I haven't received a single bulletin over that time frame when we were expecting grace.
Okay. Well, look, thank you. I wasn't aware of that. It may be something we need to look at, I think, there in that case. We had a meeting with the media joining a bit earlier this season, didn't we? On disaster preparation, if I remember. Was it in the Cultural Centre? Am I misremembering? Am I getting old? Yeah. So we did that. I wonder if that may, you know, normally we have the sort of hurricane conference, don't we? I wonder if that may have, maybe what people were thinking did the job, as it were. Let me ask, I'll have a word with Major Ryan and the DMCA team and see if it would be useful to convene something. It sounds as though there's a demand for it, so if there's a demand for it, we should, because that's the nature of the job. We're there to respond to that. Have you spoken to the DMCA themselves about it, or?
No, I'm understanding that it was sent, but my email address was wrong. In the
Okay.
list, so that's why I say I'm not aware.
Okay.
But I mean, if last year we had a discussion, it wasn't a press conference, it was a meeting between us, the media, and DMCA. And I'm sure if we have had that meeting, a lot of these trivialities would have been corrected. So apologies on that.
No.
You know, but I think our media cohort in Montserrat is growing more and more, and you know, we need to put these plans in place so that the dissemination of information can be shared.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Okay, thank you, Dwight. I'll pass that on to So now, you're allowed. Was that two questions or one? I can't remember.
That was one question.
Did you want to? Does that answer the point?
Well,
So I'll raise it with the DMCA.
Okay. Well, the other question is going back to the whole flag raising issue. One of the strong points that I drew out of that is media sensitization. It's something I've been hitting on for the longest while I've been coming to press conferences, when I got there the morning, because I was on hand, when I got there the morning, the first thing I looked for was protocols, because I'm aware of protocols. And I noticed that all the protocols that were necessary for an event like that was badly missed. You were not there. Nobody from the Office of the External Affairs was there. The Commissioner of Police in his capacity was not there. And there was no flag of Montserrat, nowhere in sight. So I noticed these protocols were lacked, and I refused to bring it live. I took pictures, but I didn't bring it live or do any of that sort. And I feel that us as media, I know that 664 would have gotten a whipping in some extent for bringing it live, but I figure we can't blame 664 or any other media house if the government or anybody within the top brass of the civil service is not doing the job to effectively provide us with the information that we need to perform our duties. If we had that information, if 664 had that information about the various protocols, like I had, maybe a different turn that we could have dealt with this on a local level instead of the regional international fiasco that it turned out into. So again, I want to appeal to your office, to appeal to whoever, that training, that information sharing is vital for us in the media if we are going to perform our duties and do that accurately and with responsibility.
Righto, Dwight, thank you. I hear you're meaning training for the Governor of Montserrat protocol team, are you? I got slightly lost. Sorry, you mean?
No, I'm training for media.
For media.
I've always said that media, as media personnel, I was a media practitioner in Grenada, and when I came to Montserrat, I realized that the format and way things are done is vastly different. So I had to learn and adapt. That's why I worked with so many of the other media houses. So I'm saying, if we had the information, training, whatever it is that we need in order to perform our duties sensibly, then a lot of that would not have happened.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think we were going to have a good separate dedicated meeting, weren't we, about the media on Montserrat and media freedom and media capacity and things. If I remember, we were going to do that, and for some reason we weren't quite able to deliver it. I think that would be a very good thing. But of course, the GIU, the Government Information Unit, needs to be front and center of that as well. It's more of a sort of domestic matter, if I can put it that way, rather than a governor's office sort of thing. But we would very much support that. I mean, we could have would it be helpful to try and go back to that discussion? Is that something we could do, Anesta? I enjoyed the media freedom discussion we had a year or two back. I mean, this is not just media freedom, but it's media capacity and investigative journalistic capacity as well. So support that. Thank you. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Too much, not enough tea.
Good morning, Malika Mackenzie, Weeks reporting from Allegana Express News. Haiti, we Allegana extend sympathy and say how sorry we are for Haiti and the devastation that happened there. The governor's office in years past have been instrumental in sending assistance to Haiti during the time of disasters. Will the office be doing this year?
Thank you. No, it's a fair question. The honest answer is I hadn't yet considered it, and we haven't had a chance in the office team to talk about it, but you're right to ask it. We did send something, didn't we, to the St. Vincent folks after the volcanic eruption. The ships, the British Navy ships in the region to help with the hurricane response, Argus and Medway, were due to come here. I think today they were going to another one of these exercises. They really like Montserrat, so they were going to drop off a disaster response troop or something to 20-odd Marines, but they've gone direct to Haiti. They've been given instructions, get over there fast. So there's immediately 2 ships on the way there, and I guess they'll be there quite soon. So that's some sort of immediate response, and they've got lots of kit and more professional, trained people. But it's a nice idea on your part, and we'll certainly take that away. Yeah.
My other question to you is a follow-up from my colleague, James White, where he asked about the Premier illness. We do not want to know the nature of his illness or all of that. But the simple question to you, H.E., was the governor informed that the Premier was ill?
Well, I wasn't informed of any particular illness. I was, in fact, on a week's leave at home. I was sort of enjoying, you know me, I like walking about the island, and my wife and and daughter, we were enjoying the trails of Montserrat. So I was sort of out of communication. Still formally in protocol terms, you remain governor when you're on island, but I wasn't sort of connected to the usual sort of civil service machinery, and I didn't chair cabinet. That was chaired by the EG on my behalf and things. So I was not really there to be communicated with. So I wasn't, is the truth. I wasn't aware of any particular issue. And as I say, I did meet the Premier in person yesterday. He was very chipper and very happy. So I'm not sure if there is indeed any issue for you to worry about or ask about, but I would ask, please do so directly to the Premier and his team as a matter of respect, because it would be very wrong of me, very discourteous of me to sort of comment on a matter like that about a government colleague.
Members of the press, I believe that's all the time we have for today for this press engagement. Ichi, do you have any final comments before we close off?
I mean, I'm just conscious if people had a couple of questions, I don't mind, because you know, we don't meet so often. I can see it.
So you're open to more questions?
I'm okay for if that clock is right, is it?
That clock is wrong. It is 11:44.
Okay. Well, I'm
11:41.
I'm all right for another 10 minutes.
Okay, we have 10 minutes more of questions. Let's go back down to the bottom.
Quickly, Your Excellency, what's the update on the appointment of the new financial secretary?
Still can't confirm, I'm afraid. Still not in a position to be able to give that announcement, but hope to be able to very shortly.
Okay, quickly, the public service reform program. It has literally fallen flat. What is the plan for that, or if we are not going to continue that program, will the money, I understand it's something like maybe 3 million or something like that, will that money be reallocated to something else quickly?
Right. Not an easy question to answer quickly. It's one that needs a good half hour and a pot of tea, because I don't think it's as simple as saying that public sector reform is flat on its back. The GRID program, which was the name of this particular DFID-funded public sector reform program, was not successful. For various reasons, and lessons I think have been learned on that. And in particular, a key component of it had the funding withdrawn last summer as a result of ODA pressures. So, you know, that's the position on the grid. But the necessity for public sector reform, the energy behind it, has not diminished. And I think most importantly, the prioritization has improved, and the recognition that we can't do everything all at once. We need to pick, focus, and deliver. We've got that message landed. And those two things, I think, in the end, will drive more progress than would have been driven by the more buckshot type approach that we were engaged in before. So I actually have a positive view of it. And the priorities that we have agreed, I say we, it's absolutely all parts of the system. It's the public service leadership, it's the cabinet, it's the UK FCDO team, and it's myself and my office are all agreed that a review of the integrity architecture and basically a rebooting of that is a top priority. And a panel has been formed to help us take that forward in a practical, pragmatic way, not months and months and huge long pages of consultancies, clear-mindedness driven by people who are on this island and know it. So that's the relationship between the Integrity Commission, the Public Service Commission, the Complaints Commission, and assorted whistleblowing machinery within the public service, how they can be brought together and streamlined. That's number one. Then we have reforms aimed at improving our self-audit. So the formation of it's called an Audit and Risk Committee of wise, experienced Montserratians to take a bigger look at our risk assessment processes in government, how we manage them, and whether we're forward-looking enough so we don't get caught by surprise by things. And I think that will be a big improvement. It's a simple piece of machinery, very low cost, and again, it's Montserratian, homegrown, home-driven. Then we have the creation of our constitutionally appointed and fully independent National Audit Office. There's a little bit of final piece of the jigsaw needed to put that in place, but some good progress has been made on that, and I hope that will remove some of the sort of misinterpretations and uncertainties about relationships that there have been on that front. And separately, for various reasons, not to get into detail because time is tight, I've commissioned a review of our public service allowance structure, which I do not believe is fit for purpose. It's become far too complicated. There's a lack of clear criteria, and there's too much of it. So I've asked for a review of that, which is in train, and we are taking the first steps towards a proper review of public service salaries. We had an unsuccessful attempt using a consultant 2 years ago, which didn't work for various reasons, didn't give us the data we need. I know everyone's sick of reviews, but this is necessary to make sure we reboot ourselves properly for what will be a very tough spending review era to come. So those are not the full panoply of public sector reform. They're not a complete new Public Service Act, but I think they will take us on a journey, actually in the end, in a better and quicker way than we were starting it before. We need a cup of tea, James. Pot of tea. Yeah.
From the media?
At the beginning of August, applications opened for this year's round of Chevening scholarships. As September fast approaches, we're also likely to see more young people leaving the island to study or to live abroad permanently. What mechanisms has your office put in place to limit the brain drain as we continue to invest in our young people, but we fail to retain them so they can make a positive contribution to this society?
Sorry.
That question, Vinaya. So part of the Chevening scholarship requirements is that if you are awarded a Chevening scholarship, you're expected to come back to Montserrat and work for at least 2 years, after which you are technically free to leave and do whatever you want if you wanted to leave. But I'm going to leave the rest of that question to H.E.
No, thank you, and that's a good point. It's a very good point. And similarly with the Government of Montserrat scholarship schemes, we've in Cabinet taken a view that we want to expand their reach. Obviously, there's a limited pot of funding, so we've done that by encouraging and incentivizing more use of digital learning in all areas, not just for traditional bachelor degrees. That's expanded the number of scholarships we can offer quite substantially. I don't have the exact figures in mind, but it's quite a good lot. And the spread of priority target subjects, I think, is very good indeed. Close to my own heart is sort of veterinary science is up there, along with some engineering issues, scientific side, but absolutely not just that. So that's not to say that's hundreds of people. It's more in the order of tens, but if you build tens every year, that's quite a useful incremental underpinning. The main thrust of policies to incentivize people to stay on island and develop businesses is obviously not for my office. That would be wrong. I mean, it's under the Constitution, it's rightly a lead for Montserrat elected part of government, and they do have lots of ideas on that. So if you haven't already, it would be well worth a dialogue with them on that. But the UK government, for its part, absolutely supports and endorses that. It's key. And you look at the quality of the young people on this island and their sheer niceness and courtesy, which I saw only the other day in a little party my wife and I gave for summer school children here. Montserrat is very lucky. Young people here are a real credit to this island. They're really good-hearted, kind and polite people, and we want more of them on island. So we're with the journey, we're with the bus on that, but the main thrust is elected government of Montserrat.
We have time for one last question from Zach.
Just a follow-up on the flag-raising ceremony. Now, the flag-raising ceremony was advertised on the police website and Facebook page for many days. Why is it that only after the event happened did the Deputy Governor's office now pick up that this happened? And events such as these monitored beforehand and before we got into all that happened now?
Well, I'm not sure the Deputy Governor's office has necessarily picked up on this, perhaps I've missed something, but I wouldn't, where to start with it? I mean, we've covered the sort of flag-raising ceremony itself, and I think the Commissioner of Police, in his note that he's put out, recognises that there were some lessons to be learned on that, of tone and approach. But I don't think we would want to go from that to a system where we have some sort of big central command cell, and any part of government that's planning anything or wanting to do anything has to somehow sort of submit it to the centre. I mean, my own office, there's absolutely no way we have the capacity to do that. We're not staffed to do that. We're a tiny office. It's not our job to check everybody's websites. And I think the same applies to the DG and no doubt the Premier's office as well. And why would we want to do it? I mean, part of modern enlightened society is empowering people. It's letting people actually make a few mistakes sometimes, to be honest, because you learn from them, and sort of moving forward and growing and developing from that, but showing a confidence in each other, not a sort of big brother, Soviet communist style, you must check up on everything. I'm sorry, I'm putting that in a slightly caricatured way, but that's would be my mood on that question, I think, Marika, there. Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have any final comments before we close off?
Well, perhaps just very briefly to say, first of all, thank you very much. I really enjoy our discussions. Being a media organisation on Montserrat is not always easy, and I'm very grateful. You do help keep us on our toes, and I mean that. You help keep me and my office on our toes, and it's a really important role. Whether it's flag issues or whatever it may be, it's good to be questioned, so thank you. And I would just say, I know it's been a really tough, year and 5 months on COVID for everybody, but particularly on this island. I do think vaccine hesitancy, other challenges, Delta variants, Gamma variants, notwithstanding, we're looking at a better period ahead. And I hope that in the autumn we can see some calibrated but more substantial opening of Montserrat in a very risk managed way. And I hope that will lead to a state where the island can feel it's a bit closer to a return to normality and vibrancy there. More on that to come, but I just wanted to sort of drop that thought in as well. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody. That brings our press conference to a close. Thank you